Life often takes unexpected turns, teaching us lessons in the most unusual ways. In today's story, we unravel the tale of Zoe, a black woman accused of kidnapping 2 children in the bustling city of Seattle. What seemed like a crime turned out to be a profound journey into love, resilience, and the power of human connection. Through her trials, Zoe touched hearts, challenged prejudices, and redefined what it means to be a family. Before we dive into this gripping narrative, if you find yourself moved or inspired by the unfolding events, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Comment below with the words, "I choose compassion and understanding in my life." Your engagement helps spread positivity and fuels conversations that can change the world. Let's begin. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Seattle, the kind that paints the skyline with hues of amber and gold. Olivia, a retired teacher with a penchant for evening strolls, found herself wandering through Green Lake Park. The laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, and the occasional bark of dogs formed the background symphony of her walk. She observed life as she always did, with a keen eye and an open heart. As she rounded a bend, Olivia noticed a scene that tugged at her attention. A black woman was sitting on a bench, her curly hair catching the sunlight. Beside her were 2 young white children, a boy and a girl, giggling over what appeared to be a shared secret. They were an ordinary trio at first glance, but as Olivia's gaze lingered, unease began to settle in her chest. She couldn't explain why. Was it the woman's occasional glance over her shoulder? Or perhaps the way she seemed overly attentive, leaning in when the children whispered? Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Years of working with children had sharpened her instincts, or so she believed. The woman, Zoe, appeared composed, even joyful. She wiped the boy's mouth with a napkin and laughed when the girl spilled juice on her dress. To most passers-by, the sight would be heartwarming. But Olivia's mind raced with questions. Who was this woman? Where were the children's parents? Olivia's pace slowed as she debated her next move. Her heart thumped with a mix of trepidation and resolve. She didn't want to overreact, but what if her gut was right? What if the children were in danger? Her thoughts returned to a recent news story about child trafficking in urban parks. A chilling reminder that the world wasn't always as safe as it seemed. Olivia's rational side urged her to walk away, to let the moment pass. Yet, her protective instincts were louder. Pulling out her phone, she discreetly snapped a picture. The woman didn't notice. With a trembling hand, Olivia dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice answered. I don't know if this is anything, but I'm at Green Lake Park, Olivia stammered. There's a woman here with 2 children, and something doesn't seem right. I don't want to accuse anyone unfairly, but could someone check on them? The operator asked for more details, and Olivia described the trio as best she could. She felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside, reassuring herself that she was acting in the children's best interests. Meanwhile, Zoe remained oblivious. She was too engrossed in Chloe and Parker, the children who had brought so much light into her life. They were her stepchildren, though she had always considered them her own. Today was a special outing to celebrate Chloe's upcoming school play and Parker's art competition. Zoe's life had been far from easy. She had faced judgment and prejudice for marrying Ethan, a white man with a complicated past. But her love for him and his children outweighed the societal challenges. She had learned to navigate the whispers and stares, focusing on the family she was building rather than the opinions of strangers. Yet, as the minutes passed, Zoe noticed an unusual tension in the air. A man jogging nearby slowed his pace, glancing at her repeatedly. A woman on a bench whispered to her friend, casting furtive looks. Zoe's smile faltered. She was no stranger to suspicion, but today it felt different, heavier. Chloe tugged at Zoe's sleeve. "Can we get ice cream now?" "Of course," Zoe replied, forcing cheer into her voice. But as they stood to leave, she saw the flashing lights of a police car entering the park. Her heart sank. She clutched the children's hands a little tighter, her mind racing through the possibilities. Had something happened nearby? Was someone in danger? She couldn't have imagined that the focus of the officer's attention would be her. 2 officers approached, their expressions guarded. "Ma'am, may we have a word with you?" one of them asked, his voice firm but not unkind. "Certainly," Zoe replied, though her pulse quickened. "We received a call about a potential situation involving these children," the officer continued. "Can you tell us your relationship to them?" Zoe's breath caught. "I'm their stepmother," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Chloe, sensing the tension, hugged Zoe's leg. "She's our mommy," the little girl declared, her voice wavering. The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Do you have identification? Any proof that you're their guardian?" Zoe fumbled in her bag, producing her driver's license and a photo of the family from her wallet. But her calm demeanor did little to dispel the officer's wariness. They turned their attention to the children, asking questions that made Chloe cry and Parker withdraw. Nearby, Olivia watched with a mix of relief and regret. She had done what she thought was right, but seeing the children's distress tugged at her conscience. She hadn't intended for things to escalate like this. As the situation unfolded, a crowd began to gather. Whispers of accusation and speculation filled the air. Zoe felt the weight of their judgment, the sting of being presumed guilty without cause. The tension reached a boiling point when Ethan arrived, his face a mask of confusion and anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Before Zoe could explain, Ethan made a choice that would change everything, a choice that revealed far more about his character than anyone expected. As Zoe's world began to unravel, the truth lurking behind Ethan's actions would soon come to light, exposing a web of lies and betrayal. Stay tuned as we explore the next chapter of this poignant tale, where revelations will test the bonds of love and challenge our deepest assumptions about trust and loyalty. Don't forget to subscribe for the next part of this story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Olivia's shoes? The air grew heavy as Ethan stormed toward the scene, his hurried steps drawing all eyes. Zoe's heart leaped with fleeting hope. Her husband was here, and surely he would clarify the misunderstanding. Yet, as Ethan reached the cluster of officers, his expression twisted into something she couldn't decipher. Frustration, anger, or perhaps fear. Whatever it wasn't the solidarity she had expected. "Ethan, thank goodness," Zoe began, her voice trembling. "Can you please explain to them who I am?" But Ethan didn't look at her. His gaze darted between the officers and the growing crowd, a calculated flicker of discomfort passing over his face. Then, with a deep breath, he spoke. I don't know what's going on here, officers, but Zoe is, well, she's not supposed to be with the kids right now." Zoe froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What are you talking about?" she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible. The officers perked up at Ethan's words, their demeanor shifting from wary to assertive. One of them gestured for Ethan to step aside and provide more information. Ethan hesitated, then leaned in closer, speaking in a hushed tone Zoe couldn't make out. The world around her seemed to spin. Her mind raced to comprehend what was happening, her hands gripping Chloe and Parker's tighter as if to anchor herself to reality. The children clung to her in return, confused tears streaking their faces. "Daddy, why are you saying that?" Chloe whimpered, her voice trembling with fear. But Ethan ignored her. When he turned back toward the group, he looked as though he had aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. "It's just complicated," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll need to take the kids now." Zoe's heart shattered. Ethan's betrayal was as sharp as any blade, cutting through the bond she thought they had built together. "What are you doing, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice stronger now despite the lump in her throat. "Why are you lying? You know I'd never harm them." Ethan avoided her gaze, his jaw tightening. "It's for the best," he said curtly, as though convincing himself more than anyone else. The officers began to separate Zoe from the children, their firm yet emotionless hands guiding her away. Chloe screamed, her small arms flailing to reach for Zoe. Parker, always the more reserved of the two, stood frozen, his face pale and expressionless. "Mommy!" Chloe wailed, her cries cutting through the murmurs of the crowd like a knife. "Don't let them take us." Zoe struggled against the officers, her voice cracking as she pleaded with them to stop. "You're making a mistake," she cried, her desperation spilling over in a torrent of words. "Ask the children. Ask anyone who knows us. I'm their mother in every way that matters." But the officers were unmoved, their focus trained on containing the situation. For them, this was a protocol, a series of steps to follow in the face of uncertainty. But for Zoe, it was a nightmare unraveling in broad daylight. The crowd whispered and gawked, their judgmental stares piercing Zoe like arrows. To them, she wasn't a mother fighting for her children. She was a stranger, an outsider who didn't fit their expectations. Ethan took the children by the hand, his grip firm but not tender. Chloe resisted, pulling against him with all her might. "I want to stay with Mommy," she shouted, her voice hoarse from crying. Parker, on the other hand, walked silently beside his father, his shoulders slumped as though the weight of the world had fallen on him. As Ethan led them away, Zoe fell to her knees, her strength finally giving out. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her family slip further and further from her grasp. The once vivid colors of the park blurred into a dull haze, her surroundings fading into insignificance. One of the officers crouched beside her, his tone softer now. "Ma'am, I know this is hard, but we're just trying to do our job. If there's been a misunderstanding, it'll get sorted out." But Zoe couldn't respond. Her words were trapped beneath the avalanche of emotions that threatened to crush her. Betrayal, anguish, fear, and somewhere, buried deep within, a flicker of resolve. As the police car carrying the children disappeared into the distance, Zoe wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. This wasn't over. She would fight, not just for Chloe and Parker, but for the truth that Ethan had so carelessly buried. Later that evening, Zoe sat alone in her dimly lit apartment, the events of the day replaying in her mind like a relentless storm. She couldn't fathom why Ethan had turned against her so abruptly. What had he told the police? And why would he, of all people, cast doubt on her role as a mother? Her thoughts turned to the children, their tearful faces haunting her. They needed her now more than ever. She couldn't let Ethan's lies dictate their future. Determined to uncover the truth, Zoe began making calls. She reached out to friends, neighbors, anyone who could vouch for her character and her relationship with the children. Her phone buzzed endlessly, messages pouring in from those who had witnessed the scene at the park. But amidst the chaos, one name stood out: Amanda, Ethan's ex-wife and the biological mother of Chloe and Parker. Zoe had always been cautious in her dealings with Amanda, knowing the woman harbored resentment toward her. Yet now, Amanda held a key piece of the puzzle. Zoe hesitated before dialing Amanda's number. The line rang several times before a curt voice answered. "What do you want, Zoe?" "I need your help," Zoe said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Ethan accused me of kidnapping the kids. I don't know why he's doing this, but you know the truth. You know how much I love them." Amanda let out a bitter laugh. "Why should I care? They're not my problem anymore." Zoe's stomach churned. Amanda's indifference was like a slap in the face. "They're your children," Zoe said firmly. "How can you just wash your hands of them?" "I didn't ask for this life, Zoe," Amanda replied coldly. "And if Ethan wants to drag you into the mud, that's between the two of you. I'm done." The call ended abruptly, leaving Zoe with an annoying sense of despair. She had hoped Amanda might intervene, might at least confirm her role as the children's caregiver. But it was clear Amanda had long since abandoned any semblance of maternal responsibility. Yet Zoe refused to give up. As the night wore on, she pored over legal documents, old photographs, and anything that might help prove her case. She wasn't just fighting for custody or reputation. She was fighting for the children's sense of security, their right to grow up in an environment of love and stability. As dawn broke, Zoe stared out the window, her determination hardening into resolve. She would confront Ethan, dig deeper into his motives, and uncover the secrets he was so desperate to hide. And in doing so, she would prove to Chloe and Parker that love wasn't just a word, it was a promise, one she intended to keep. The web of deceit Ethan spun was thicker than Zoe imagined. The next chapter reveals the cracks in his story and the unexpected alliances that arise as the truth begins to surface. Don't miss what happens next as Zoe takes her first steps toward reclaiming her family. Subscribe now and comment below. I choose truth and resilience in my life. Zoe arrived at Ethan's home with a mix of trepidation and determination. The air was brisk, the early morning chill biting at her skin as she stood on the doorstep. She knocked firmly, her resolve firm despite the ache in her chest. When the door creaked open, Ethan stood there, disheveled and visibly irritated. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I need answers," Zoe replied, stepping forward before he could shut the door. "Why did you lie to the police?" "Ethan, why would you do this to me, to us?" Ethan rubbed his face, avoiding her gaze. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered. "Then make me understand," Zoe pressed, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "Because right now, all I see is a man tearing apart the family he promised to protect." Ethan sighed, stepping back and motioning for her to enter. The living room was cluttered with toys and empty coffee mugs, a stark contrast to the order Zoe maintained when she lived there. He sat heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. "It's not that simple," he began, his voice low. I didn't know what else to do. They were asking questions and I panicked." "Panicked?" Zoe repeated, incredulous. "You accused me of kidnapping your children, Ethan. Do you even understand what you've done?" Ethan finally met her gaze, his eyes clouded with guilt and something deeper fear. "They were going to start digging into my life," he admitted. "Into the finances, the custody arrangements, everything. I couldn't let that happen." Zoe felt the weight of his words settle over her like a suffocating blanket. "So this wasn't about me," she said slowly, the realization dawning. "This was about protecting yourself. But from what?" Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I made some mistakes," he confessed. "Bad investments, debts I couldn't pay off. If they find out, I could lose everything, the house, the kids, my reputation." Zoe stared at him, the magnitude of his selfishness hitting her like a tidal wave. "And you thought throwing me under the bus was the solution?" she asked, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what you've put Chloe and Parker through? They were terrified, Ethan. They need stability, not this chaos you're creating." Ethan looked away, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his shame. "I didn't know it would go this far," he muttered. "I thought it would blow over once they checked into it." Zoe shook her head, her anger bubbling to the surface. "You don't get to play victim here," she said firmly. "This isn't just about you. It's about those kids and the life we've been trying to build for them. You've broken their trust, Ethan and mine." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and oppressive. Then Ethan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want me to do?" Zoe took a deep breath, steadying herself. "You're going to tell the truth," she said. "You're going to go to the police and explain everything, your lies, your fears, all of it. And you're going to do it today." Ethan's eyes widened in alarm. "I can't do that," he said quickly. "Do you know what they'll do to me? I could lose custody, Zoe. I could lose everything." "You already have," Zoe replied coldly. "Because if you don't come clean, I will. And when the truth comes out, and it will, you'll have nothing left, not even your children's respect." Ethan stared at her, his face pale and drawn. For the first time, Zoe saw the cracks in the man she had once loved, the insecurity and desperation that had driven him to such betrayal. "I'll think about it," he said finally, his voice weak. "That's not good enough," Zoe said, turning toward the door. "You have until tonight. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to the police myself." As she left, the weight of the confrontation settled heavily on her shoulders. She knew Ethan's confession wouldn't erase the damage done, but it was a start. And for Chloe and Parker's sake, she had to believe it was possible to rebuild what had been broken. Back at her apartment, Zoe began preparing for the next step. She gathered every piece of documentation she had: photos, medical records, school forms, all proof of her role in the children's lives. She also reached out to friends and neighbors who could vouch for her character, their words forming a safety net against Ethan's lies. That evening, her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "I'll do it," it read. Meet me at the station tomorrow morning." Relief washed over Zoe, but it was tempered by caution. She didn't trust Ethan to follow through without pressure, but at least he was taking the first step. The following morning, they met at the police station. Ethan looked exhausted, his face lined with regret. He approached the desk officer with hesitance, explaining that he needed to amend his statement. As he recounted the truth, that Zoe was the children's stepmother and had their best interests at heart, the officers listened carefully, their expressions neutral but attentive. When it was over, one of the officers turned to Zoe. "We'll need to verify this information," he said, "but it seems you've been caught in an unfortunate misunderstanding." "Unfortunate?" Zoe echoed, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "You dragged me through the mud based on a hunch and a lie. That's more than unfortunate, it's unjust." The officer nodded, his expression softening. "You're right," he admitted, "and I'm sorry for the distress this has caused. We'll do our best to make it right." As Zoe left the station, her steps felt lighter, though her heart remained heavy. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but she had taken the first step toward reclaiming her life and her family. But the ripple effects of Ethan's actions were far from over. The next chapter delves into Amanda's surprising decision and how it would reshape Zoe's relationship with the children forever. Stay tuned and remember to comment below. I stand for truth and justice in my life. As Zoe worked to untangle the mess Ethan had created, her thoughts kept circling back to Amanda. She had always been a shadow in their lives, a distant presence who occasionally sent cards or made hurried phone calls, more out of obligation than affection. Chloe and Parker rarely spoke of her, and when they did, it was with a mix of curiosity and quiet disappointment. Amanda's indifference had left a void, one that Zoe had poured her heart into filling. But now, Zoe needed Amanda to do something she had never done before. Step up as their mother, even if just for a moment. After days of deliberation, Zoe decided to confront Amanda in person. Armed with a quiet determination, she drove to Amanda's home, a modest bungalow tucked away in a suburban neighborhood. The door opened after several knocks, revealing Amanda, dressed casually, her expression marked by surprise and mild irritation. "What do you want, Zoe?" Amanda asked, crossing her arms as she leaned against the doorframe. "I need to talk to you about the kids," Zoe replied firmly. "May I come in?" Amanda hesitated but stepped aside, allowing Zoe to enter. The living room was sparse, the air tinged with the faint scent of cigarettes. Amanda gestured toward a worn couch. "Make it quick," she said. Zoe sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Ethan's lies have put the kids in a terrible position," she began. "They're scared, confused, and they need stability now more than ever." Amanda raised an eyebrow, her demeanor unyielding. "And what does that have to do with me? I'm not the one who caused this mess." "No, you're not," Zoe admitted, her voice calm but insistent. "But you're their biological mother. Your voice carries weight in ways mine doesn't. If you confirm that I've been the one caring for them, it could make all the difference." Amanda let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "You think my word means anything? I gave up custody for a reason, Zoe. I wasn't cut out for motherhood then, and I'm not now. Those kids are better off with you, always have been." Zoe's heart sank, though she wasn't entirely surprised. "Amanda, I'm not asking you to take them back," she said softly. "I'm asking you to do what's right for them. They deserve to know they're loved, even if you're not the one raising them." Amanda's gaze flickered with something almost imperceptible, regret, perhaps, or guilt. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Look, I'm sorry for what you're going through," she said flatly. "But I've moved on. And if Ethan's making things difficult, that's between you and him." Zoe leaned forward, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "This isn't just about me or Ethan, it's about Chloe and Parker. Do you know what Chloe said to me last night? She asked if she'd done something wrong to make her dad so angry. She's 7, Amanda. No child should feel like that." Amanda's expression softened briefly, but her walls quickly went back up. "I can't change the past," she muttered. "No, you can't," Zoe agreed. "But you can help shape their future. You can give them the assurance that they weren't abandoned, that their mother cared enough to stand up for them." even if it was just once. Amanda stood abruptly, her movements restless. I don't know what you expect me to do, Zoe. Walk into a courtroom and suddenly play the role of doting mom? That's not me. I expect you to show them that they matter, Zoe replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's inconvenient, because they deserve that much, Amanda. They deserve better than being pawns in Ethan's lies. Amanda paced the room, her face a mixture of frustration and conflicted emotions. Finally, she stopped, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I'll think about it, she said grudgingly. Zoe stood, sensing that she wouldn't get anything more today. I hope you do, she said, her tone measured but firm. Because they need you, Amanda, even if it's just this once. As Zoe left, her emotions were a whirlwind of hope and despair. She knew Amanda's history too well to place much faith in her promise, but she clung to the sliver of possibility that Chloe and Parker might finally get a glimmer of validation from their mother. Days turned into weeks, and Amanda's indifference became clearer with each passing moment. She didn't call, didn't reach out, didn't show up. Zoe had expected as much, but the finality of Amanda's absence still stung. Yet amid the disappointment, Zoe found renewed purpose. She would not allow Amanda's apathy or Ethan's betrayal to dictate the narrative of Chloe and Parker's lives. They deserved a foundation built on love, not the wreckage of their parents' shortcomings. And if Zoe had to be the one to provide it, so be it. Her resolve was tested when Parker, the quieter of the two, began acting out. Once a thoughtful and introspective child, he became withdrawn, his frustration manifesting in defiance and anger. One evening, after an especially difficult day, Zoe found him sitting alone in his room, his small frame curled against the wall. Parker, she said gently, kneeling beside him. What's going on, sweetheart? He didn't answer at first, his face buried in his arms. But after a long silence, he muttered, Why does everyone leave? The question pierced Zoe's heart. She reached out, placing a hand on his back. Not everyone. Parker, she said softly. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. He looked up at her then, his eyes red and brimming with tears. But Dad said you wouldn't come back, and Mom doesn't care. It's like we don't matter to anyone. Zoe pulled him into her arms, holding him tightly as he cried. That's not true, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. You matter so much, Parker. To me, to Chloe, even to your dad in his own flawed way. And I will spend every day proving that to you, no matter what it takes. In that moment, something shifted. Parker didn't respond, but he clung to her as though afraid to let go. It was a small step, but Zoe knew it was the beginning of something larger, a chance to rebuild the trust that had been broken. As Zoe tucked Parker into bed that night, her resolve hardened. She couldn't control Amanda's choices or erase Ethan's mistakes, but she could be the constant in Chloe and Parker's lives. She could be the one who stayed. The next chapter would test Zoe's strength further as she fought to provide a safe and loving home for the children. And in doing so, she would discover the true depth of their bond and the resilience of the human spirit. Subscribe to continue this heartfelt journey and comment below. I choose love and perseverance in my life. Weeks passed and life found a fragile rhythm in Zoe's household. The legal storm Ethan had unleashed began to quiet after his reluctant confession at the police station. While the authorities dismissed the kidnapping charges, the ordeal left scars on everyone involved. Zoe noticed it most in Parker, whose guarded demeanor revealed the emotional toll of Ethan and Amanda's betrayals. Chloe, ever the optimist, tried to carry on as though nothing had changed. But even she wasn't immune to the lingering tension. Zoe knew rebuilding their sense of security would take time, but she was determined to try. She began small, focusing on routines that brought comfort: family dinners filled with laughter, bedtime stories with lessons of resilience, and weekend outings where the world felt simpler. Yet, despite her efforts, Parker remained distant. One evening, as they sat together painting small wooden figurines, Parker's silence hung heavy in the air. Zoe glanced at him, his brush hovering over the unfinished piece in his hand. You don't have to finish it if you don't feel like it, she said gently. Parker frowned, his lips pressing into a thin line. "Why do you even try so hard?" he asked suddenly, his voice quiet but sharp. "It's not like we're really your kids." The words hit Zoe like a punch to the gut, but she kept her expression calm. Setting her brush down, she leaned forward. "Because I love you," she said simply. "And being your mom doesn't have to be about biology. It's about showing up, no matter what." Parker's gaze remained fixed on the table, his shoulders tense. "But Mom left," he muttered. "And Dad lied. How do I know you won't leave too?" Zoe's chest tightened. She reached across the table, gently placing her hand over his. "I can't change what they did," she said softly. "But I can promise you this, I'm here for you, Parker, always. You and Chloe are my family, and nothing will ever change that." Parker didn't respond, but the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes softened slightly. Zoe knew trust couldn't be forced, but she hoped her words planted the seed of something stronger between them. Over the next few weeks, Parker's guarded walls began to crack, if only slightly. He started to linger longer during family activities, his laughter occasionally breaking through the clouds of doubt that followed him. He even began to ask Zoe for help with his school projects, a small but significant step toward rebuilding their bond. One day, Parker approached Zoe with a carefully folded piece of paper in his hand. "It's for you," he said awkwardly, avoiding her eyes as he handed it to her. Unfolding the paper, Zoe saw a drawing of their family, her, Chloe and Parker, standing together beneath a sunny sky. Written in careful blocky letters beneath the image were the words, "My real family." Tears welled in Zoe's eyes as she looked at Parker, who shifted nervously from foot to foot. "Do you like it?" he asked hesitantly. "It's perfect," she said, pulling him into a tight hug. "Thank you, Parker. This means more to me than you'll ever know." That small gesture marked a turning point in their relationship. Parker began to open up more, sharing his thoughts and feelings with Zoe in ways he hadn't before. Chloe, too, seemed to thrive in the renewed sense of stability Zoe worked tirelessly to provide. The weight of their past began to lift, replaced by a growing bond that felt unshakable. But challenges remained, especially when Ethan resurfaced, seeking to mend his relationship with the children. His attempts were clumsy, often overshadowed by his lingering defensiveness and inability to take full responsibility for his actions. Chloe welcomed him with open arms, her forgiving nature a stark contrast to Parker's wariness. One weekend, Ethan invited the children to spend the day with him. Chloe was ecstatic, but Parker hesitated, his reluctance clear as he avoided meeting Zoe's eyes. "You don't have to go if you're not ready," Zoe told him gently. "It's your choice." Parker frowned, conflicted. "What if he lies again?" he asked. Zoe knelt beside him, her hands resting lightly on his shoulders. "Then you'll know that it's not your fault," she said firmly. "You've done nothing wrong, Parker. And whatever happens, I'll be here when you get back." After a long pause, Parker nodded. "Okay, I'll go." The day passed slowly for Zoe, her mind racing with what-ifs. When the children finally returned, Chloe burst through the door, chattering excitedly about their outing. Parker followed more slowly, his face thoughtful but not upset. "How was it?" Zoe asked, keeping her tone light. Parker shrugged. "It was okay," he said. He tried, but it felt different, like he was scared we wouldn't believe him. Zoe nodded, sensing the complexity of Parker's feelings. "And how do you feel about that?" "I don't know," Parker admitted, "but I think I'm glad I went." "That's brave of you," Zoe said with a smile, "and I'm proud of you for giving him a chance." As the days turned into months, the bond between Zoe and the children grew stronger. The shadows of their past didn't disappear, but they no longer defined their lives. Instead, they found strength in their connection, building a future grounded in trust and love. Still, Zoe couldn't ignore the larger lessons their journey had taught her. Lessons about compassion, resilience, and the power of showing up when it mattered most. She began sharing their story with others, hoping to inspire empathy and understanding in a world too quick to judge. And though their path was far from easy, Zoe knew one thing for certain: love, when tested, only grows stronger when it's rooted in truth. The next chapter will reveal how Zoe's journey inspired the community to confront its biases and embrace a deeper sense of unity. Subscribe to continue following this emotional tale and comment below. I choose to build my life on love and understanding. Zoe's story, though intensely personal, began to ripple through the community in ways she never anticipated. At first, it was small conversations among neighbors, murmurs of her ordeal during parent-teacher meetings. But soon, her resilience in the face of prejudice and betrayal became a beacon for those who had faced similar struggles. People who had once cast judgment on her in the park now approached her with sheepish apologies or tentative kindness, their assumptions challenged by the truth that had emerged. One day, a teacher from Chloe's school reached out to Zoe with a surprising request. "Mrs. Zoe," the teacher began over the phone, her voice warm but hesitant, "we've been following what you've been through, and it's made a lot of us here think about how we approach situations involving families. Would you be willing to come speak to the students? Maybe share your story?" Zoe hesitated, caught off guard. Public speaking wasn't something she had ever envisioned herself doing, let alone sharing her family's painful ordeal with a room full of children and educators. But as she thought about the impact it could have, about the lessons Chloe and Parker had learned, and the strength they had found together, she realized it wasn't just about her anymore. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady. The weeks leading up to the talk were a whirlwind of preparation. Zoe worked tirelessly to craft a message that was honest yet hopeful, rooted in the challenges she had faced but focused on the empathy and growth that had come from them. She spoke to Chloe and Parker about the opportunity, careful to ensure they were comfortable with her sharing their story. "I think it's good," Parker said quietly, surprising Zoe with his thoughtfulness. "People need to know what it feels like when they don't listen or when they assume the worst." Chloe nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, and you're really good at helping people understand stuff, Mom." On the day of the talk, Zoe stood in front of a packed auditorium, her heart pounding as she surveyed the sea of young faces. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the memory of why she was there. Then she began. "Thank you for having me," she started, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "I want to share a story with you, not just mine, but one that belongs to my family. It's a story about mistakes, assumptions, and how we can grow when we choose to see each other with compassion instead of judgment." She recounted the events of that fateful day in the park, careful to weave in the broader lessons that had emerged. "What happened to me wasn't unique," she said. "Every day, people make snap judgments about others based on how they look, where they come from, or the families they're part of. And those judgments can have real consequences, ones that hurt not just the people we judge, but ourselves as well." As she spoke, she saw the room shift. Students leaned forward in their seats, their eyes wide with curiosity and understanding. Teachers nodded subtly, their expressions thoughtful. Chloe and Parker sat in the front row, their presence a quiet reminder of the love that had carried them through the storm. When Zoe finished, the room erupted into applause, but the most meaningful responses came afterward, as students and teachers approached her with their own stories and reflections. A young girl shared how she had been teased for her mixed heritage. A teacher admitted to having once doubted a student's abilities because of their background. Each conversation deepened Zoe's conviction that sharing her story was the right choice. Her talk marked the beginning of something larger. Word spread quickly, and soon Zoe was invited to speak at other schools, community centers, and local events. Her message of empathy and understanding resonated with people from all walks of life, prompting conversations about the assumptions and biases that too often went unchecked. At home, Chloe and Parker began to reflect the changes they saw in their mother. Parker, once hesitant to share his feelings, grew more confident in expressing himself. Chloe, ever the social butterfly, started encouraging her classmates to stand up for one another. Their bond with Zoe deepened, the scars of their past transforming into a foundation of trust and resilience. One evening, as they sat together reviewing photos from Zoe's latest event, Parker spoke up. "I think what you're doing is really important, Mom," he said quietly. "It's like You're helping people understand things they don't see." Zoe smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Parker," she said. "But it's not just me. You and Chloe are part of this too. Your strength and honesty are what inspire me to keep going." As their lives settled into a new rhythm, Zoe found herself reflecting on the unexpected paths her journey had taken. What began as a nightmare of accusation and betrayal had become a testament to the power of love and perseverance. She had faced challenges she never imagined, yet she had emerged stronger, her bond with Chloe and Parker unbreakable. Still, she knew the road ahead wasn't without its obstacles. The prejudices and biases that had fueled her ordeal weren't confined to her. Community, they were part of a larger societal issue. But if her story could spark even a small ripple of change, she believed it was worth every moment of vulnerability. The next chapter of Zoe's journey will show how the lessons learned from her experience began to reshape the fabric of the community, bringing people together in unexpected ways. Stay tuned, and don't forget to comment below. I choose to see others with compassion and an open heart. Amid Zoe's growing role as a voice for empathy and understanding, life at home took on a new dynamic. Chloe and Parker, once reluctant participants in the whirlwind surrounding their family, began to find their own ways of processing and sharing their experiences. It started with a school assignment, a simple project meant to explore themes of family and connection, but it would soon become a catalyst for deeper reflection and healing. Chloe approached the project with her usual enthusiasm, eager to dive into the creative process. "Mom, can we use our old family photos for this?" she asked one evening, spreading construction paper and glitter across the dining table. "Of course," Zoe replied, smiling as she watched Chloe sort through a box of memories. "What's the theme of your project?" "It's about who makes us feel safe," Chloe said brightly, glancing at Parker. "I want to show how families come in all shapes and sizes." Parker, seated nearby with his own notebook, hesitated before chiming in. "Mine's different," he said quietly. "We're supposed to write about someone who changed our lives. I think I'm going to write about you, Mom." Zoe's heart swelled, though she kept her reaction subdued, not wanting to overwhelm him. "That means a lot to me, Parker," she said softly. "I'm proud of both of you for sharing your thoughts and feelings like this." Over the next week, Chloe and Parker poured themselves into their projects. Chloe's creation took shape as a colorful collage of photographs, drawings, and heartfelt captions. One image showed her and Parker with Zoe at the park, laughing as they held ice cream cones. Another featured a candid shot of them decorating the Christmas tree, their faces glowing with joy. Beneath each image, Chloe wrote simple yet poignant messages. "Love makes a family, and home is where we feel safe." Parker's approach was more introspective. His essay unfolded as a heartfelt letter to Zoe, recounting their shared journey with raw honesty. "When everything felt like it was falling apart, you were the one who stayed," he wrote. "You taught me that being a parent isn't about who you're born to, it's about who shows up." The night before their projects were due, Zoe sat with them as they added the finishing touches. "I think these are amazing," she said, her voice filled with pride. "You've both captured something so important about what it means to be a family." The next day, Chloe and Parker presented their work to their respective classes. Chloe's collage drew admiration from her peers, who marveled at her vibrant creativity and her message of inclusivity. But it was Parker's essay that left an indelible mark. As he read his words aloud, the room grew silent, his classmates hanging on every word. "I used to think families were supposed to look a certain way," Parker said, his voice steady despite the weight of his emotions. "But I've learned that what really matters is love, trust, and knowing someone will always be there for you. That's what my mom taught me." When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Parker's teacher, visibly moved, thanked him for his courage and insight. Later that day, she shared his essay with the school principal, who asked for permission to include it in the school's newsletter as an example of empathy and resilience. When Zoe read the newsletter a week later, tears filled her eyes. Parker's words, paired with Chloe's vibrant collage, had been given a place of honor, their message resonating far beyond the classroom. At home, The children's project sparked new conversations. Chloe, always curious and open-hearted, asked questions about the challenges Zoe had faced as their stepmother. "Was it hard for you, Mom?" she asked one evening as they prepared dinner together. Zoe considered the question carefully. "It was hard sometimes," she admitted. "But loving you and Parker has always made it worth it. Every challenge we faced has only made our bond stronger." Parker, listening quietly from the kitchen table, spoke up. "I didn't make it easy for you," he said, his tone tinged with guilt. Zoe turned to him, her expression gentle. "You were going through so much, Parker. It was never about making things easy. It was about showing you that I'd be here no matter what." The children's openness about their feelings began to influence others as well. At school, Chloe's collage and Parker's essay inspired a wave of similar projects, with students exploring themes of family, identity, and resilience in their own ways. Teachers incorporated discussions about empathy and understanding into their lessons, using Zoe's story as a touchstone for broader conversations. One evening, as the family sat together on the couch, Parker brought up a surprising idea. "What if we do something together to help other families?" he suggested. Chloe's eyes lit up, like a community event or something. Zoe smiled, touched by their enthusiasm. "That's a wonderful idea," she said. "What did you have in mind?" "I was thinking we could talk about what we've learned," Parker said thoughtfully, "like how assumptions can hurt people, and how families aren't always what you expect." Chloe nodded eagerly. "And we could make it fun too, like with crafts or games that show how different people can connect." Zoe felt a swell of pride as she listened to her children brainstorm. Their willingness to share their experiences and inspire others was a testament to the strength they had found as a family. The seeds of the idea took root, growing into a community event that would bring people together to celebrate diversity and empathy. But more than that, it became a way for Chloe and Parker to take ownership of their story, turning their challenges into something that could uplift others. The next chapter will reveal how Zoe and the Children's Initiative transformed their neighborhood, fostering connections and breaking down barriers in ways they never imagined. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below. I choose to build a world of empathy and understanding. The idea of a community event quickly took shape in Zoe's household. Over the following weeks, the dining table transformed into a hub of creativity, covered with markers, construction paper, sticky notes, and a growing stack of plans. Chloe and Parker led the charge, their excitement infectious as they brainstormed activities and themes. The event was named Building Bridges, a celebration of families and empathy. It was a simple yet powerful concept, an afternoon of storytelling, interactive games, and open dialogue designed to bring people together and challenge assumptions. Zoe reached out to local schools, community leaders, and small businesses for support. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Teachers volunteered to host workshops, the local library offered its space, and a bakery even donated cupcakes decorated with tiny bridges made of icing. Parents and neighbors, many of whom had followed Zoe's story, were eager to contribute, providing supplies and spreading the word. As the event approached, Zoe marveled at how her children had stepped into leadership roles. Chloe's boundless enthusiasm made her a natural organizer, and Parker, though quieter, surprised Zoe with his thoughtful ideas. "We should have a space where people can share their stories," he suggested one evening, carefully sketching out a design for a story wall where attendees could write or draw their experiences. "It might help them see they're not alone." "That's a beautiful idea," Zoe said, her heart swelling with pride. On the day of the event, the library's community room buzzed with energy. Bright banners reading Building Bridges hung from the walls, and tables were arranged with crafts, books, and conversation prompts. The centerpiece was Parker's story wall, a large display covered in colorful notes and drawings. Messages like, "Families are made with love, not blood, and kindness can change a life," quickly filled the space, creating a tapestry of shared humanity. Zoe began the event with a brief speech, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This event isn't just about my family story," she said, addressing the crowd of parents. children, and community members. It's about all of us. It's about recognizing the assumptions we carry and choosing to replace them with understanding and compassion. Together, we can build bridges that connect us rather than walls that divide us. The day unfolded with a mix of joy and reflection. Children decorated paper bridges with messages of kindness, while parents attended workshops on fostering empathy in their families. Teachers led discussions about challenging stereotypes, sharing stories of students who had taught them valuable lessons. Chloe and Parker moved among the crowd, their confidence and excitement palpable as they introduced activities and encouraged participation. One moment, in particular, stood out to Zoe. A young boy approached the story wall with his mother, clutching a marker in his small hand. He hesitated, looking up at her nervously. "It's okay," she said gently. "Write whatever's in your heart." He carefully scrawled the words, "I miss my dad." Zoe felt a pang of emotion as the boy's mother knelt beside him, her eyes glistening. "Do you want to tell me about him?" she asked softly, and the boy nodded. It was a simple exchange, but it embodied the essence of what Zoe hoped the event would achieve: a safe space for connection and healing. As the afternoon wore on, Zoe found herself in conversations that deepened her understanding of the community's struggles and strengths. A single father shared how he often felt judged for not fitting the traditional mold of a family. A grandmother raising her granddaughter after her daughter's passing spoke of the challenges and rewards of her unconventional role. "I thought people like me didn't belong," the grandmother admitted. "But seeing all these stories, seeing what you've been through, it reminds me that love is what really matters." By the time the event drew to a close, the library room was alive with a sense of camaraderie and purpose. The story wall was overflowing with contributions, a vivid testament to the diversity of experiences that had been shared. Chloe and Parker stood beside it, beaming with pride as attendees stopped to read the notes and add their own. As Zoe helped pack up supplies, the librarian approached her with a smile. "This was extraordinary," she said. "You've given this community something truly special. I hope this isn't the last event like this." Zoe smiled, her exhaustion tempered by a deep sense of fulfillment. "It won't be," she promised. That evening, back at home, the family gathered around the table for a quiet dinner. Chloe chattered excitedly about the new friends she had made, while Parker reflected on the stories he had heard. "I think people really understood what we were trying to say," he said thoughtfully. "They did," Zoe agreed, her voice warm. "And that's because of you too. You've shown people that even when things feel broken, we can find ways to connect and heal." In the days that followed, Zoe received messages from attendees sharing how the event had impacted them. One teacher wrote about using the story wall concept in her classroom to foster openness among her students. A local business owner offered to sponsor future events, inspired by the turnout and the message of inclusion. But perhaps the most meaningful message came from a woman Zoe didn't recognize. It was a simple email with the subject line, "Thank you." The message read, "I attended your event with my son. We've struggled a lot since his father left, but hearing your story and the stories of others helped us see that we're not alone. Thank you for reminding us that love is stronger than judgment." Zoe read the message aloud to Chloe and Parker, her voice thick with emotion. "This is why we do this," she said, setting the phone down, "to remind people of what really matters." As their lives moved forward, the event became a cornerstone for Zoe and her children, a testament to their resilience and the power of their bond. It was more than just a day of activities. It was a step toward transforming their community into a place where empathy and understanding could thrive. The next chapter will explore how Zoe's growing influence continues to reshape her family's future and inspire those around her to embrace love and compassion. Subscribe to keep following this journey and comment below. I choose to build bridges and heal divides in my life. As the weeks turned into months, the ripples from building bridges continued to spread throughout the community. The connections made during the event lingered, sparking conversations in grocery stores, classrooms, and parks. Zoe often found herself approached by strangers who had attended or heard about the event, their words of gratitude reinforcing the power of the work she had begun. Yet for Zoe, the most profound transformations were the ones unfolding at home. Within the walls she shared with Chloe and Parker, life had not returned to the way it was before the accusations and betrayals, but it had evolved into something stronger and more authentic. Chloe's natural optimism remained a guiding light, her laughter filling their home with warmth. Parker, once so reserved, had blossomed into a thoughtful and introspective young man who wasn't afraid to speak his truth. Their bond with Zoe, forged in the fires of hardship, was now an unshakable foundation. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room for their weekly tradition of sharing highlights from the week, Chloe spoke up with a gleam in her eye. "You know what I think we should do?" she asked, looking between Zoe and Parker. "We should write a book about everything we've learned." "Like a family book," Zoe chuckled, leaning back in her chair. "A book, huh? That's a big project." "But think about it," Chloe said, her excitement bubbling over. "We could tell our story, just like you do when you speak at events. And we can include the things people wrote on the story wall, and all the lessons we've learned about families and kindness." Parker nodded thoughtfully, surprising Zoe with his support. "It's not a bad idea," he said. "People liked the story wall because it made them feel connected. A book could do the same thing, but for even more people." Zoe looked at her children, her heart swelling with pride and love. "If you're serious about this, we can try," she said, "but only if we do it together." The next few months became a whirlwind of writing sessions and creative brainstorming. Chloe focused on gathering quotes and colorful anecdotes, while Parker carefully crafted sections that delved into the deeper lessons they had learned. Zoe wove their contributions together, balancing the lighthearted moments with the profound truths that had emerged from their journey. The book, titled Building Bridges: Lessons in Love and Empathy, was not just a recounting of their experiences, but a guide for others, seeking to navigate the complexities of family and community. It included practical advice, heartfelt stories, and reflections from the people they had met along the way. When the manuscript was finished, Zoe sent it to a small local publisher recommended by a friend. She expected a polite rejection or, at best, a long wait for feedback. Instead, she received a call less than 2 weeks later. "This is incredible," the editor said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Your story is timely, heartfelt, and so needed right now. We'd love to work with you to bring this to life." Zoe's breath caught as she thanked the editor, her mind racing with disbelief and excitement. She shared the news with Chloe and Parker that evening, their cheers echoing through the house. "See? I told you it was a great idea," Chloe exclaimed, throwing her arms around Zoe. The publication of Building Bridges marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. The book quickly gained attention, not just in their community, but beyond. Invitations to speak at larger events and even national conferences began pouring in, giving Zoe and her family the opportunity to share their message with a wider audience. Yet, amidst the growing recognition, Zoe remained grounded in the simple joys of their day-to-day lives. She continued to volunteer at the children's school, host family game nights, and create new traditions that celebrated the strength of their bond. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Parker broke the comfortable silence. "Mom," he said, his voice thoughtful, "do you ever think about how different things could have been if that day at the park never happened?" Zoe considered his question, the memories of that day still vivid but no longer painful. "I do," she admitted. "And while I wouldn't wish those challenges on anyone, I think they taught us something important, that we're stronger than we think and that love can grow even in the hardest circumstances." Chloe nodded, her gaze fixed on the fading light. "I'm glad things happened the way they did," she said quietly, "because it brought us closer, and now we get to help other people too." As Zoe looked at her children, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had shared. The trials they had faced had not broken them. They had shaped them into a family bound by trust, understanding, and unwavering love. The next morning, Zoe found a note on the kitchen table, written in Parker's neat handwriting. "Love isn't just something you feel. It's something you do, every day. Thank you for teaching us that." Tears filled Zoe's eyes as she read the note, her heart full. She knew their story was far from over, but whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. As Zoe and her children stepped into this new chapter of their lives, they carried with them not just the lessons of their past, but a vision for a brighter future one, built on the bridges they had worked so hard to create. Their story was no longer just theirs. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt judged, misunderstood, or alone. It was a reminder that no matter how difficult the journey, love and empathy could light the way forward. Thank you for following this heartfelt journey. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below. I choose to live with love, empathy, and courage. Thank you for being part of this emotional journey with Zoe, Chloe, and Parker. Their story is a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the connections we can build when we choose understanding over judgment. If this story inspired you, we invite you to become part of our growing community by hitting the subscribe button. Let's continue exploring powerful stories that remind us of the best in humanity. Also, don't forget to check out our other videos that dive into themes of compassion, courage, and transformation. Together, we can create a world where empathy leads the way. Comment below with this affirmation: I choose to live with love, empathy, and courage. Let's spread positivity and build bridges one story at a time.